Hello, it's Arneth, and in this video I'm going to show you how I was able to make backup copies of my Joker no Kuni bonus CDs. And of course, not just any backup copies, but copies that do not require that the disc be inserted into the PC for you to run the game, and ones that are region-free, that are free of the restriction of needing to have your PC set to Japanese locale to be able to play them. Okay, so with that little disclaimer out of the way, here's the prerequisites to be able to follow this tutorial. So there will be some links in the description for all the software I used, and you will need to have a physical copy of the disk you wish to back up, and your PC will need to be set into Japanese locale to start with. So while we will be removing the region restrictions, the disks are initially in Japanese locale, and therefore you need to be in Japanese locale at the start of this tutorial, just so we have no issues with backing up the game, installing it, and modifying it. Once it is modified, we will be free of that restriction. All right, so now to get started here, I have my disk inserted into the disk drive. As you can see, it's my D drive here. And we're going to be talking about what copy protection this disk uses, which makes it a little bit harder to back up than most. And actually, in my case, even though I have a physical copy of the disk, my computer refuses to install it because the copy protection actually kind of messes it up a bit. So, start off here, I have this image of the actual disk. And as you can see, there is a black ring fully around the disk here. It's a little hard to see in these regions, but trust me here, this black ring goes all the way around, is a perfect circle. This is a ring of dead sectors. Typically, dead sectors on a disk would indicate that there is corruption or damage to the disk. You know, like if your disk drive scratched it or something. These are not scratches, these are intentionally done. And so this is our first hint as to what copy protection this uses. If we pop into the disk itself here, you will see we have two folders that are a little odd. We have a normal folder called ProRing, and we have a hidden folder called Protect. If we pop into ProRing, we just have a library here, a DLL file. So we can't glean much from this other than it is a library. And in this little hidden folder here, we have protect.pro. So this helps us narrow down exactly what type of copy protection it is. I did some research into it, and it is this type of copy protection from Japan called ProRing. As you can see, they highlight that ring of dead sectors around the disk. Essentially, what it seems that this form of copy protection does is this file here, this protect.pro, points to that area of dead sectors on the disk. So let's go back here. It points to essentially this region on the disk, which is actually what was making my computer fail to read this disk, because it thought the disk was corrupted. But the theory behind this is that it makes the game really hard to copy because the computer will abort trying to copy it when it thinks it has found like a dead part of the disk, when it thinks your disk is just too unreadable. Um, so the way we get around this is I'm using a program called Alcohol 120%. So if we pull that up here, link will be in the description for this. We have to turn on some special features to make it easier to make a copy of this disk. So we'll go into our image making wizard here because we want to make what they call a disk image. Essentially, it's a virtual copy of our physical disk. You see I have my D drive selected here. This is the D drive. And we're going to want to go into reading options here. We're going to make sure we leave that image name the same. I want to put this into my tutorial folder by specifically, yeah, let's just put tutorial for now. And then we want to enable advanced sector scanning. So advanced sector scanning enables us to skip the dead sectors. So rather than the computer just aborting trying to make an image of this disk when it encounters what it thinks is corruption, we just say, you know what, I know there's corruption, just skip it. Make a copy of the disk without that portion anyway. So like I said, this will enable us to skip through it rather than having the whole thing fail on us. And then we will hit start here, and it will take about 10 minutes to read. All right, so as you can see there, um, sector scanning allowed us to skip a bunch of read errors here. And so we skipped a sizable portion of content right here. But like I said, thankfully, that's just the DRM, or copy protection on this thing, so it will not impact the game itself. So now we can finish this up, and alcohol 120% ejected the disk from my system. So it is no longer in my disk drive, it's sitting there open now. So we'll close out of this, and this next step is optional. If you like these disk images as they are, you can use them as they are, or if you prefer an ISO file, which I typically prefer them that way, I find them much easier to use, you can use MDF to ISO, and you can convert it. I will say also you do not need to make the disk images at all if the disk works just fine for you as is, but I had to go through this whole image making process due to the disk not being able to be read fully by my computer. It would error out whenever I tried to install it. So that's why I'm going through this image making process. Also, it's a good idea to make image backups of your CDs in case they get damaged. But if you're only interested in making like the game play without like the disk being inserted and other stuff, you can, rather than using a disk image, you can use the actual disk. But for me here, I'm going to take this ISO and I'm going to mount it and I'm going to install the game from here. So if you decided that you didn't want to make an image backup of your game, then you don't have to worry about this step. You can just start right here, or you don't have to worry about the previous step, you can start here. So from here, I need to go to my desktop because that's where my tutorial folder is. Desktop, and then we're going to go to tutorial, and I'm going to install this in the original CD folder. So this would be an unmodified copy of our install because we will be changing how the files work. And just because the screen went black there, it did was a little pop-up there where I had to give it permission to install, and then it installed. All right. And so now that it is installed, we can go back to the tutorial folder here, and you can see that I now have the entire game installed in my original CD folder. So now, if we want to play it, we can just double-click on it, and the game launches as you'd expect. So this copy of the game, as I mentioned, will only work on Japanese locale, and will only work if the disk is inserted. Now that is if it is a virtual disk, or if it is a physical disk in this instance. So I am mounting the digital disk here, and I'm going to eject it, and I will show you what happens if there is no disk. Now, like I said, this could be a digital disk or a real physical disk. So if we try to launch it, we get an error saying that the disk is not inserted. So what we're going to want to do here is, now that we have our original CD, we're going to need Key Kiri Kiri with Madc Hook DLL. These go together. Download will be in the description. And we will also want to have Kiri Kiri 2. I got this one from the Internet Archive, and this is the actual game engine that was used to make the game originally. So, to start off here, we are going to want to grab these bad boys and put them in here. So, not only will we need these in here, we'll actually need to remount our game here, because that little Key Kiri Kiri here, this bad boy requires that disk be inserted because it actually tries to run the game to end up like decrypting the files. So essentially what we're doing with this Key Kiri Kiri is that we are going to be breaking this game apart and extracting all the files from it. So we're going to be extracting stuff from shop data, system media, common data, and the executable. The executable is particularly notable because this is where the DRM is contained, and it also has code stuff, which will be useful if you want to make a patch. So we're going to need to start up our command prompt here. So you can do that just by typing cmd right here, and then hitting enter. And so from here, we'll want to type Key Kiri Kiri, and we can leave off the executable there. And then we want to type I, which is the file that we wish to import. So we'll start with the executable here. To be the executable, and then we will type tac-o, which means output. And again, we will have it be the Alice JT shop. Now this one will be without the executable. Without the executable, or without the extension in general, it'll make it a folder. So it indicates that we want to extract this. So we'll hit enter on that, and you'll see that we now have that executable extracted into all of its code. So KS is, well, these KS extension files are like scenes in the game, and these TJSs are code for the game. So, like, if you ever wanted to modify the code of any of these games, all of these TJSs in here are what you'd want to mess with. And if you're making a patch, they are what you would need to modify to tell it to load your patch versus certain assets in the original game. So now that we've done that, we want to repeat that process for all of the other files. So in this case, it's all the XP3s. So we'll do common data XP3, tac O, common data, well, without the XP3 at the end, so just common data, and that will extract. In here is some image assets. So if we get in here, these aren't even Alice characters. These are just general purpose things. Okay, yeah, so these are actually nameplates that are used in the game. Some other stuff are like placeholder assets. So like this character thing, that's a placeholder asset the disk uses. And yeah, this is a video that you see in the game. So we're going to do that again. And we're going to do it with the biggest file now, which is shop data. This is slightly different from other Kiri games. Usually data XP3 is the largest one. But since this has a shop CD and a maker CD, there's two different variants of the CD, they actually have different main XP3s. So typically you'd be the biggest file would be the data XP3, but in this case it's shop data XP3. It's only slightly notable because some extractors get confused if the XP3 you're using is not the main XP3, and some repackers are also confused if you're not using one that's named data.xp3 specifically. But in our case, that should not be a problem. All the things I'm using don't care if your thing is named slightly different. So again, we'll extract that last one there. So shop data here contains the stuff that you'd want to translate if you're making a patch. This is all the dialogue for the game. There's also some CSVs, so these are for, this also contains dialogue, but these dialogues are more for like the voice actor commentary and like just small little message section. So yeah, like the free talk stuff. So this just says like, oh, it's a free talk, click back if you don't want to listen to it. So these would also need to be translated, and we go into image and CG here. This shows you all the CGs that are available in the game. Not every bonus CD has CGs. Most of them do. But some, I think specifically the Clover CDs, have some other bonus content that isn't new CGs. So just, you keep that in mind. And system media here, I think this is more of just like, yeah, like background images, so like stuff used for the menus, and that's about it. So now that we have all of these extracted, I need to explain to you exactly where we are getting the DRM from. So now that we have all of these extracted, we'll have to rebundle them at some point. But the DRM is actually in a folder that we didn't extract. It's in plugin. The whole reason we had to extract all that other stuff is because those other bundles are dependent on the executable thinking that we have this plugin here. So specifically this TPM plugin here. You notice it's different from the rest of these, which are DLLs. I'll admit I don't know exactly how this works, but I do know that if we try removing it initially, so like if we move this to tutorial, so it's no longer in the plugin folder, it's no longer accessible by the executable. Even though we have the disk inserted at the moment, it popped up off screen, but if we double click on that, it gives us a really weird error here. I don't read Japanese, I can't tell you what this means, but it's upset that we removed that one file. So just removing it does not fix the issue. We actually need to rebuild this executable and these data bundles without the plugin existing. That way it is not referenced by anything in like the executable, and therefore nothing else depends on it. So what I would recommend doing at this point is copying all of this over, so all the extracted stuff. So we want to copy over Alice JT Shop, common data, plugin, shop data, and system media. If you're working on the other Joker CD, you'd want to copy over maker data instead of shop data. There is no shop data on the other CD because it's the maker CD instead. So you'll want to put this in here, and it will take a little minute to transfer. And again, we'll want to make sure that in the plugin here, we do not have that little DRM thing that requires the CD be inserted into the disk drive. So without that there, we'll actually need to use, actually, now that we're here, we're going to want to remove the requirement for English, or not English, the requirement for Japanese locale. Because currently all the files are encoded with Shift.jis. So we don't want to repack these yet until we have changed all of the files in here to not require Shift.jis as well. So I have a little plugin that I wrote. It's a simple little Python script here. This will need to be modified as you use it, but this base file will be available linked in the description below. So essentially what you're going to want to do is you're going to copy your file path. You're going to want to copy it into here. And then in my case, we're going to double up on these slashes here. Then you can save it. And you'll see all the files that we're going to be changing the encoding of. So we're going to be changing it from Shift.jis to UTF-16 LEBOM. We're going to be changing every file with the KS extension, with the CSV extension, and with the TJS extension. So essentially anything that has text that could be readable, be it code or actual in-game text, we want to change it so that the encoding is in a more like neutral, well, the encoding is more neutral, essentially, one that would run on all platforms, as Shift.js does not work on English locale machines, or I think pretty much any machine that is non-Japanese. So now with the script installed, I have a plugin, which again will be linked in the description below, and I will go into scripts here, and you'll notice that the script is named converter patch, as I use this for when I'm converting stuff for patches, and we'll just hit run. Now it's going to do a lot of flashing there. Essentially, it opened every KS file that was present within all of these folders here, since we gave it the base directory. It opened every single one of them and saved it in the right encoding. So now we're going to need to repeat this for TJS, and now that that's one character longer, we need to make that just a little bit longer. And then we will need to run this script again. So run converter patch. And as you can see, lots of files getting converted here. That's also why we're doing it by script and not doing this by hand. There is too many files to make this worth doing by hand. And again, CSV has the same number of characters for, so we don't need to change the number in there. And then we'll go to Python scripts, converter patch again. And as you can see, there wasn't very many of those. And so now we're good on this. That should remove all the requirements to be in Japanese locale. So now we can exit out of here. And now we'll want to open up Kiri 2. So we're going to want to go into Tools, and then we're going to want to use KRKR rel, which is Kiri like releaser. So this is also why it's important to be in Japanese locale. This program will not work if you are in non-Japanese locale. So we're going to want to go in here, and we're going to want to make this an executable. So we will go into NoDRMCD, Alice JT shop, and we'll open that up. We will change it from XP3 to executable, which gives us an extra tab here. So now this is for some like polishing details here. This allows us to set an icon, and currently we do not have an icon to load. So again, I have stuff linked in the description. So I'm going to be using an icon viewer that's linked down there. If we go to properties of the original executable that we're no longer using and go to icons, we can find the icon this uses, and we can save this into our tutorial tutorial folder as main icon. All right, so now that we have that in our tutorial folder, we can pop back in here, main icon, and then again we want to be executable. So we want to have this box checked, have our icon there. Want to name it, well, want to have it be an executable, not an XP3, and then we want to name it the same thing as this. It's not like absolutely required to rename it the same thing, but you probably want to for like clarity's sake and to make it look as much like the original as possible. So we want to go in here, name it Alice JT shop executable, and then hit save. And then you want to hit this button here, and it will take a second, and bam, we have it written. So this cannot be used as is. We need to actually make these XP3s again. So the way we do that is we hit this little back button here, and then we go into NoDRMCD. Sorry, I don't want to load the whole folder. I want to load common data, and we want this one to be selected as XP3 here. We want to name this common data. Now, it is important that you name these ones correctly. Even though like the executable didn't need to be named the same thing, these do need to be named the same thing because code references them by name. So we'll need to rename this common data xp3, and then we'll need to save that. And you can see that it showed up here. We'll go back again. We'll go into no DRM CD. We will go into shop data here. Now this one will be a little bit bigger. So this one will end up taking a little bit longer to compress into a nice little bundle. But again, we'll name it that. And then we'll hit this button here. And as you can see, quite a few files in there, over 2,000. It contains all of the image assets, so like all of the CGs, it contains all the sprites, it contains all of like the voice lines. It contains, like I said, like 90% of the game in there. So it's like every asset you could look for is pretty much probably going to be in that file. If you're compressing, or if you're making an XP3 bundle file for a larger game, like one of the main Alice games and not a bonus disc, expect this to be much, much larger. They're very big, like just thousands upon thousands of files. Alright, so that one's done. We'll go back out, no DRM CD, and then we want to select System Media, which is the last one we need to do. System Media, XP3, and then we will save that as well. This one should be much quicker. There we go. And so now we need to test that what we did actually worked. It should, because we have our plugin, we have the CF, the executable, and then our 3 XP3s. So let's run it. And as you can see, it works just fine. It works exactly indistinguishable from the original. So now the real test is to eject the CD. So now we need to make sure, because that CD in theory would still work, to bypass the check, to make sure that the CD is in the drive. So we should eject it, and then launch this again. And as you can see, it runs without the CD. And so now to confirm that that is indeed different from the original behavior, we can go in here and we can launch the original CD, which popped up off screen with me, with again this error, because we removed the DRM from it. And even if we replace the DRM back into here and try running this again, as you can see, it's telling us the disk is not inserted into the drive. So we've been able to confirm that indeed this now works with no disk. So that's all good. So next up, we're going to want to try testing that this works being in non-Japanese locale. So I'll have to see you in a second for that, as I will have to switch my computer into that, and it'll require a restart. So I'll be right back. All right, and we're back in English locale now. So I'm going to show you the difference here between trying to run the original version of the game versus running the updated version. So if we try to run the original version that we didn't apply all those fixes to, you can see it just completely spits out garbage. It's because it can't read the Japanese text at all because of the Shift.js encoding. Now, if we go over to the one that we fixed, the no DRM CD, and we launch it, you can see that it runs as we'd expect. Up here it looks a little funny. The Japanese text can't display because we're not in Shift.js encoding anymore. But of course these can be changed to more like English text if you would like to make a patch for it. If we start here, we can click on any character, and you can see that all of the text displays correctly. Pretty much if we hadn't converted the encoding on the CSVs, this wouldn't load correctly. And to test that the KS files were converted correctly, we should pop into here. And you can see that the script is running fine. Let's get to some actual Japanese text here. Yep, and you can see that that works good too. And you can see the text is running just fine in here as well. And we can tell that all the TJSs were converted correctly because the game launches. If they weren't converted correctly, the game would not launch. So I won't be going over how to make a patch specifically in this video. I'll probably make another video about that. But this should get you through all of like the DRM, like copy protection hoops, just to be able to play the game on your computer, again, with no disk inserted. As you can see, there's no disk inserted into the D drive anymore, or even a virtual disk. No disks. And it's working on an English locale machine. So that would at least get those annoyances out of the way. And at this point, if you're not looking to make a patch, you can delete all of these folders here. Let's just delete them for the sake of showing it off. I'll bring them back for when we're making a patch. But again, like I said, you can just delete those, and you can run the game just fine. Alright, so I hope that was informative. I know it's probably a little confusing, a lot of steps, but hopefully, simple enough steps that you could follow along. And I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next weird hacking video, whatever I do next.